Are you a good gardener? Do you have your own garden or allotment, or maybe a few houseplants dotted around the place? Maybe for you, lockdown has been a good time. You've been able to get on with some projects. You've been able to take a hold of the garden and water it and nurture it. For us, unfortunately, we're not very good gardeners, and any plant that comes into our garden needs to be very brave and hardy, and it may or may not survive. But we do appreciate a good gardener. We went last weekend to Harlow Car Gardens near Harrogate for a few hours and really enjoyed the beauty and the variety and the creativity of the garden space there, and also the design and the skill of and knowledge of the gardeners. In last week's passage in John 14, we looked at Jesus being the way to the Father and the way to find God and what he is like. In this week's passage, we're looking at, as it were, the way to stay with God, how he looks after us. And Jesus describes this in horticultural terms, or viticultural terms, if you're being precise. The idea of the vine and the vineyard. And this is an image that's relevant across the whole of the Old Testament, starting with Noah back in Genesis 6, where he planted a vineyard, and then Melchizedek in Genesis 14 brought out bread and wine to Abraham when he'd rescued Lot from his enemies. And then again, we've got the story of the spies entering into the promised land, into Canaan, to have a look. And they come back with an enormous bunch of grapes and a few stories. And there's also stories of Israel abusing their position, particularly the leaders. And in Ezekiel, it talks about the ruin and dilapidation of the vineyard as a picture of how people have ignored God and how they've gone astray. And vineyards and the products of the vineyard, the vine and the grapes that they produce, is very much of a central theme for Jesus. We've got his parables about the vineyard and the owners and tenants. We've got the example of the first miracle at the wedding at Cana. And we've of course got the symbols that we now have as for communion, being bread and wine, as being key elements of our faith. And in this passage in John 15, we have a startling new revelation, one of the I am sayings. I am the true vine. And we perhaps should consider what that meant for the disciples, what they understood, given their history, and perhaps how we now think of it today. As we listen to Jesus talking about how the Father deals with us, how do we feel about that? What should we be doing? And are the results of all of this worth it, given the opposition that we face?